So I was a carpenter for 30 years, and during that time I did a lot of demolition. I demolished kitchens, bathrooms, floors, walls, ceilings. It was all part of the work, like putting up crown molding in a living room, just a little dirtier. Now when you're on a crew doing that kind of work, the running joke is what bag of money, what cache of jewels, what trove of documents might be behind that wall you're about to lay into with a sledgehammer. I never did find any money, or anything that could be redeemed for money, but I did find one old artifact that was valuable to me as a lover of old artifacts, and it was valuable to the descendant of the person who made it, whom I eventually tracked down after the lapse of 8 years and to whom I gave it. I found it in 2013 in an old house in one of Princeton, New Jersey's most venerable neighborhoods. The company I was working for at the time had been hired by a new owner to do what was known as a whole house remodel, in which much of the interior is reconfigured and thus demolished to make way for new electric, new HVAC, and a new design. Some of the demolition involved was as messy as it gets. When I found this artifact, I and one other carpenter had been detailed to a second-floor bedroom to strip the plaster and lath off all 4 walls and the ceiling. We had the moon suits on, the hoodies, the goggles, the respirators fogging up the goggles. We had big crowbars to pull the plaster, lath, and insulation down from the ceiling onto our heads. We had a chute going out the window into a dumpster so we could dispose of the debris. In short, we had all the accoutrements needed to strip the entire room right down to the studs and ceiling joists. When we were almost finished, there was one thing left to do. The room had these giant cast iron radiators, and they needed to be moved away from the walls so we could get to the plaster behind them. Now, I grew up in a house with radiators, and anyone who knows radiators knows that they make nice ledges to put things on. And if these things fall behind the radiators and they're not missed, they will remain there for a very long time. So when I had disconnected a radiator and slid it away from the wall, I found this artifact, and I instantly recognized it as so precious that I showed it to no one because I didn't want any input on what to do with it. I put it in my truck and I kept it. And it would take me 8 years to find the motivation to date the artifact, ascertain who made it, and then find some descendant to give it to. But before I reveal what it is, here's a little information on the family that was living in the house in 1929 when I believe the artifact was made. The father was Francis William Dinsmore, born 1880, died 1953. I believe he owned a factory in Trenton that made products out of porcelain. I don't know if he actually built the house that I worked on, but he had 4 children: James, born in 1908, Elizabeth, born in 1910, Francis Jr., born in 1913, and Martha, born in 1916. Martha, I believe, when she was 13 years old in 1929, made the artifact that I found, and here it is. The Monthly Growl. It is an 8-page news magazine purportedly written by the dogs of the neighborhood and containing snippets of news both about the other dogs and about the dogs' owners. Because it is no longer in my possession, I am working off of photographs. Notice the little singeing that took place up here from the heat of the radiator. 80 years worth of heat. I love how even the little ribbon that knits the pages together is still intact. You can see that when I found it and brushed off all the broken pieces of plaster, I immediately knew it was special. Turning the page to page 1, you find the staff of the Monthly Growl and a brief editorial. When I first found the Monthly Growl, I Googled Theodore, Patricia, and Victoria Dinsmore, thinking that they were all siblings and it would explain the origin of the document. In fact, it did not. Those names did not lead me to the family of Francis William Dinsmore because they are not people. They are dogs owned by the family. Also dogs are the other staff reporters, Jocko and Peggy Bohan, Argus, Timor, and Queequeg Shear. The editorial is rather tame as editorials by dogs go. It merely mentions an Easter copy of the Monthly Growl that was very popular. If you'd like to pause the video and read it, you are welcome to do so. Page 2 glosses over sports. Apparently one dog, Miss Sciporia Slusser, Found something in the Olden's field and had a grand time with it. From sports, we go to the society page. Now, the first item in the society page really had me flummoxed. It says that Teddy Kennedy announces that his mistress had a birthday party on Friday, March 21st, 1989, in honor of her 10th birthday. I thought in 2013 that this was a joke at the expense of Senator Ted Kennedy from Massachusetts. I now know that this is not the case. The item refers to a neighbor named Kennedy who has a dog named Teddy, and his mistress refers to his owner. In the monthly Growl, master and mistress are terms used to denote the owners of the dogs. As far as that year cited 1989, I can't explain it, and I won't try to as I move on to more items in the document and more clues. The next item. Theodore Dinsmore says his mistress will be 13 years old next Friday. This is a reference to Martha Dinsmore, who turned 13 years old on Friday, March 29, 1929. This is corroborated by the following item. Theodore Dinsmore's birthday is sometime in March. It will be celebrated on the 29th of March. And here I can extrapolate, despite the torn page, that it says something like, on his mistress's birthday. Now, the reason I know this information is not based on the first page of the document, but on page 4, which I will get to. But I have verified that in 1929, March 29th did fall on a Friday. Page 3 has some more society items. No big clues. I'm only going to mention the second one. Colonel Kennedy announces that his mistress was in a French play in Miss Fine's Select School for Select Young Ladies on Tuesday afternoon at 3:30 o'clock. In 2013, I was not familiar with Miss Fine's Select School. I now know that it was the forerunner of today's Princeton Day School, having combined with an all-boys school, Princeton Country Day, in 1960. Elizabeth Dinsmore graduated from Miss Fine's in 1928 and Martha in 1934. Those facts are easily found on the internet. Now the next page, page 4, has the Rosetta Stone of clues that unlocked the mystery of the monthly Growl. It took me 8 years to pick up on it, though. Last summer, our family was vacationing in the Hudson River Valley around Hyde Park, New York, and we drove by the Dinsmore Golf Course in Statsburg. It's no relation to the Dinsmores of Princeton, but just seeing that name again determined me to go over the monthly Growl with a fine-tooth comb and see if I could determine its origin. So here is page 4. I like the second item. We have noticed that there is something black which represents a dog up at Mrs. Freeze. We will be very glad to have him join our society, but we are afraid he is in the same fix as Arrow Whitmer. Has to be tied up. And now to the third item with its key clue. Major Theodore Dinsmore had company for dinner Tuesday night. The guests were Mr. James Bathgate of the Princeton Junior School for Boys and a friend of Mr. Bathgate's, Martin Jones of Germantown. I had never Googled James Bathgate before. It just seemed some nondescript name buried in the document. But once I did so, the internet easily yielded up the fact that James Bathgate married Elizabeth Dinsmore. Their engagement at the end of 1929 was announced in both publications for Miss Fine's School and Princeton University, where James Bathgate was class of 1922. So this information obviously led me to Martha, and because the year she was born, 1916, is a matter of public record, I could use the clues on page 2 to deduce that she was the author of the monthly Growl. Of course, more information on Martha and Elizabeth is readily available on the internet, but I'm confining the scope of the video just to the monthly Growl. And I'm going to wrap it up with the 3 pages of advertisements at the end of the magazine. There's Kennel Ration, a dog food, a company that was founded in 1922. Wheatina, already a hugely popular cereal in the 1920s that was made in Rahway, New Jersey, in a factory called Wheatinaville. Belle Meade Sweets. There was actually a candy factory north of Princeton in Belle Meade called Belle Meade Sweets. I believe it closed down in the 1940s. Here are some more advertisements. And you can pause the video and read them at your leisure if you like. And here is the final page of the monthly Growl. A little worse for wear after 80 years behind the radiator. Out of respect for their privacy, I won't divulge what descendant of the family I gave the monthly Growl to, but I will say they were very appreciative. And thus ends the tale of the monthly Growl.